And I tell my associates now, and I really hammer this. We are not ashamed to lose cases. We are ashamed if we don't do the best that we can to win cases and to give the best possible advice if there are settlement opportunities. But we don't wear failure as a loss, as a failure or shame. We just get back up and do it again.
Howdy, and welcome to the show. Cooper's Code focuses on legal issues and notable practitioners, distilling wisdom so we all achieve the best results for our clients. I'm Miles Cooper, and I'm thrilled to share part 2 of this conversation with Scott Montgomery. You come from a family of lawyers. Is that fair?
Correct.
Can you unpack that a little bit? And did you do anything unusual for Halloween as a young child as far as that's concerned?
So I do come from a family of lawyers, being that my dad is a lawyer and my uncle is a lawyer. My mom and my aunt were both. Everyone went to UCSB, but ultimately went to law school different places. My mom and my aunt are not lawyers, but my dad and my uncle are lawyers. And my dad, and so my family, there's a boy and a girl. I'm in their family. There's a boy, lawyer, boy and a girl. And then in my family, I became a lawyer. And in their family, one of the children became a lawyer, my cousin, Reed. And she's been a lawyer for a while down in Los Angeles. She's like 5-6 years younger than me. So we do have a lot of lawyers in the family. It was always something that was everyone thought was a good idea. And I took to it very early because I was just very close with my dad.
What kind of law did your dad practice?
So my dad was a general practitioner, because my dad was barred in, I believe, 77. And so he went back to Santa Rosa and he told me, back then everyone kind of just did everything. Like the specialization concept really didn't exist, particularly in a smaller town. And so he kind of just did everything. And ultimately, so he did PI, he did, family law, he did all kinds of different business disputes. He tried a lot of cases up in Mendocino, oddly enough, related to like lumber contracts. Because he had met an attorney who wasn't litigating that much, but had a client who owned a lumber mill. And the client was, he was apparently deceased now, but was wildly unreasonable because he was a rich guy who pulled himself up by the bootstraps with lumber mills. And Georgia Pacific would come in constantly wanting to do contracts and things. And so apparently everything was a handshake deal. This is my dad's story. And when this particular client, who there's no attorney-client issues because this was 40 years ago and he's deceased, if the handshake was in his favor, he would come to my dad to enforce the agreement. And if the handshake was not in his favor, there was an invalid agreement, and often it had never occurred. And he said, and my dad said what was crazy is that they were doing these large deals, Georgia Pacific's reps and them were, these, not the Georgia Pacific, but just these lumber companies. And it was that's how things were done. And so you'd have all these kind of epic breach of contract trials where it's he said, she said, and and so my dad did a lot of that, because that client was just, had a lot of deals and futures go up and down, commodity prices go up and down. And so, I would always hear about those things. I would hear about the family law stuff. I'd hear about the PI stuff growing up. And so from a really young age, on the family component of it, from a really young age, my dad and I would talk about law, and not because he would always talk about it to me. I think it was because I would ask. And I remember we would go to his office and, on weekends, and because he would work on weekends. And I think it was also a way to get me out of the house so my mom could have some time to herself. We'd go down, he'd kind of run the office, and some of the other attorneys would be there. It was like an office share. They weren't like, those where it's a bunch of just kind of solo attorneys in one office. They were all really great. And I would kind of play on the typewriter, and then I would, do whatever, and we'd go get lunch and all that. And so, when I was in that age and time frame, apparently if people were around, I would carry on like a yellow pad, and I would ask people, I'd say like, what's your legal problem? And everyone thought it was really cute. When you're a kid, you get a positive response to something. I just kept doing it. I actually don't remember this because I was very small, like I think under 5. when I started doing this. And I would like, what's your legal problem? What's your legal problem? Everyone thought it was really cute. So I kept doing it. And then as time went on, and I got more into it, I would, do things like I would have my dad's briefcase and kind of suit and slick my hair back for Halloween, like as I got older, a number of different years. And I really thought being a lawyer was really cool. And then another story on that front, and I still do. I mean, but that was just as a child, I remember thinking that's a really cool job. And I think a lot of people would think, oh, I want to be an airline pilot, or I want to run an excavator. And not that I didn't think excavators were cool, but I just thought my dad was so cool that being a lawyer that's what he was. And so it seemed really cool. And it is really cool. I mean, he didn't tell me about all the busy work and things like that, but that's something I learned later. But on the lawyer front too, and the dad front, I remember too, when I was in 6th grade, I believe, you would do have your kid back then, they would have your dad come to work day, and it would be like different days. Like it wasn't like they'd all come on one day different parents would come and talk about their job for like maybe an hour, I believe. And It was like over a period of time. Maybe it was less. It seemed like a long time. And so a lot of parents came in and did that. And my dad came in, and again, being that he was a trial attorney and had a lot of experience talking in front of people, he put on like a mini trial. But the takeaway to keep everyone interested was it was like who had stolen these donuts, and then shockingly everyone got donuts, right? So if you want to if you want to entertain little kids and get them engaged, bring that pink box. So I mean, I remember everyone too saying, "Wow, your dad is like so cool," and that was so interesting. I mean, probably more the donuts in retrospect, but it was that's a really positive memory. So I think throughout that whole time of growing up, I was always just kind of told that being a lawyer was a great thing. I looked up to my dad, and I still do. And so I concluded that on my own. And then as time went on, people would tell me, oh, you are good at talking, basically, so you would be a good lawyer. And I mean, there is truth in that, I guess. I mean, if you're just someone who's really quiet, you wouldn't be a good courtroom lawyer. I mean, obviously there's lots of lawyers who don't have to talk for a living, but that was kind of then as you got older, I kind of got more of that component. Well, I think it'll be something you're good at because, you like to talk, or, you're kind of outgoing, or, probably also more aptly, they're like, you don't have any other skills. You have an international relations degree from CU Boulder. So you probably better figure out something to do with that, as time also went on. So law school was ultimately where I went.
Did you always want to be a lawyer, or was there some period, say in your teens, where like, nah, that's not.
So I always wanted to be a lawyer to the extent I didn't want to be a professional hockey player. And what's so funny about that is, just like I told you, and maybe this is a hallmark of either my success or failure, just like that case I told you about where I'm like, I got this, I'm going to win. The guy's like, take the money. I truly believed I had that. I was just going to get this, nice 6-figure verdict. I had the same mentality with when I was growing up playing hockey. I was good, but I remember thinking, if I work hard enough, I can be a professional hockey player. And that's all I wanted to be for a period of time. Totally incorrect. And so then I had to go back to the lawyering thing, and I've never looked back. But yeah, so that was a period of time. But it was really born born not in reality, because I was never going to be a professional hockey player. But I thought maybe if I worked hard enough and willed it, it could happen. So yeah, not totally losing sight of the law, but kind of wanting to be something not physical and not law related. Although what's interesting about that is my mom always told me, education and these different things, you can do other stuff. As long as you get an education, you can go back to other things. And I think she knew I wasn't going to be a professional hockey player, but I think that was kind of her way to keep me actually doing school related things at certain points. She'd go, even a professional hockey player, by the time you're 30, you're going to have to do something else. Okay, that's true. I guess I should study.
The Steve Young approach.
That's right. And he's done pretty good.
Yeah. If you're enjoying what we're doing here with Cooper's Code, please help us extend our reach by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and consider sharing an episode with a friend. Additionally, we want to know who you want to hear on the show. Have an interview suggestion? Email us at podcast@coopers.law. The third point that you brought up on cases was, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's what we do as lawyers during examinations. Right. In essence, putting the case in a posture where the defense makes poor choices.
Right.
And you already said nice things about a lot of the opposing counsel that you've dealt with. Just like our side has a team, their side has a team.
Right.
And sometimes they do their group think or fail to do a focus group or look at it as a cookie cutter situation as opposed to an individual situation. They make some wrong choices.
Yeah.
You seem to have a pretty good track record of helping them make wrong decisions along the way. And for those who do want to go to trial and want to get a verdict that is beyond policy, but where a policy demand was made in a way where it opens that bad faith position up, what have you learned along the way that has helped you do that?
So when I say poor choices, I'm obviously referring to, not accepting limits demands and things like that. I don't have an answer to that question because I always expect that they're going, like in both those cases, I expected the limits demands to be paid, that we'd never be having this conversation. So maybe it's just maybe I guess it could be one thing. It could be that the level of ineptitude that I present to the defense emboldens them and the insurance company.
I'm going to stop you on. So I won't quibble with you on the idea that sometimes the other side doesn't do their homework.
Right.
And they don't understand who they're up against. And if you're a younger lawyer, if you don't have a track record of trials or verdicts,
right,
you may have to go to trial more often to be able to get the other side to understand that. But after you've notched an 8-figure verdict and you're going to trial with a policy demand on another similar case, how do they not pay you?
I don't have a good, Miles, I wish I had. I have never worked on the defense. I've never worked, and I think you're similar. I've never worked inside an insurance company or inside an insurance defense law firm. So I do the one blind spot that some people who are on our side of the V now, have a benefit of is I never have been in the room even once when decisions are made on cases like this. I don't profess to have any clue as to why or how those decisions were made. I'm glad they were made. But in terms of why or how, it's beyond me. But I'm glad they did, because what was told to me, and maybe this is the answer to the question, and maybe it segues into what you're saying. There's a lawyer who I really respect, who you may know, and his name's Dan Balaban. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Dan said to me, which is kind of interesting to your point. So during the first trial where we got that nice verdict last year, I was kind of talking to Dan a fair bit, just because Dan was someone I respected and has had 8-figure verdicts and results and things. And so I just felt like I could bounce stuff off him, because I was scared, because there wasn't an insignificant amount of money on the table in that case in the micro, but it wasn't in the macro lining up with what our focus groups were telling us was going to happen. That's sort of scary, because you have a pretty good amount of money on the table, many millions of dollars. And then you have focus groups that are telling you, well, if you do everything right, it could be way more than that. And in that case, the policy limit, I think, is like 11 or 12 million. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it wasn't a policy limits offer, but it was significant. I had many conversations with Dan about that during the thing, about just kind of having almost like pep talks, where he would just say, you just got to keep going. You just got to believe in yourself, in so many words. He didn't make it like pep talks. It's not his style, but just really supporting me through that trial. And then when it was done, he called me, and what he said is, which is kind of interesting to your point, he said something to the effect of, I hope that you did a great job, but now they know who you are and you only get one. They're coming next time. And I remember thinking, gosh, he's probably right. Like, to your point, like, they're going to know, okay, this guy can command these sorts of results in the right situation. That's what he was trying to convey. It was like a happy moment. It was like a negative thing. So I don't know, how we ended up in that situation again. But, I'm thankful that we did.
I'd love to hear how your conversations with
This is a good
Brown,
story.
Green, and Dan influenced your practice.
Brown, Green, and Dan didn't just influence my practice. They totally changed the trajectory of what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to do trials. I was wanting to try cases. We ran across Dan and Brown, I believe it was like 2016, 2017. I have to go back and look. And it was on a multi-fatality. It was a very sad case, wrongful death case, where Mike Green and I were representing one of the decedents' families, and they were representing the other decedents. And they were brought in at the last second by someone who had had the case the whole time out of LA, hadn't really done anything with it. And then she brought them in at the last second when I think there was, the offers weren't coming, and I don't think she was going to try the case. And so watching them and the way that they worked and handled that case totally changed kind of my thinking in terms of our approach. When I say that, I mean, they had zero fear. Brown Green, I think, had probably tried 8,000 trial. I mean, I'm kidding, but gosh, I mean, he represented the bus company in the beginning of his career. I know his life story. It's amazing. I mean, the guy has done, more trials probably than, everyone in the Bay Area combined or something, is currently, I mean, the guy's just crazy. And he's just the most gentlemanly, kind, mentoring type person. And then Dan kind of by that point was doing everything with him, and they would do everything together. And they just had this kind of brave, just we'll get in there and see what happens. And, kind of no nonsense, no fear approach that, I think maybe from losing some cases earlier, I still was gung ho, but I had a lot more fear of loss because that sort of kind of started to creep in as I'd done more and gotten some mixed results in that early period of time. And ultimately, I could tell you 5 hours of stories about interactions since then with both of them and everything they've done. But there's really a pinnacle kind of conversation that I had, and it was actually with Brown, and that we lost that case. And as a relatively new associate at that point, it was pretty devastating because it was such a massive situation, such a sad situation. I mean, just the pictures alone still are in my head of this car with all these deceased people. And it was just a horrendous situation, challenging case, but horrendous situation. And we lost, and I just felt devastated. I think I was like crying, and, which is not something I'm really proud of, but it was just that sort of kind of moment. And Brown, like, kind of just like took me as we're like leaving, the jury's read their verdict. We're on the way out, and and he says, Scott, he's like, we did everything we could. And he goes, and a lot of people would say I'm in the Hall of Fame. And you know who else is in the Hall of Fame? Willie Mays. You know what his batting average was? About 300. He goes, my batting average is about the same. And that took this fear and this mantra that a lot of attorneys give, not necessarily in my firm, but a lot of, I've never lost a case. I still hear that crap. That's garbage. And to have a guy like Brown, who's like this titan of the plaintiff's trial bar, just have this raw moment with you, and you're like, 5 years in, basically crying. You think, gosh, can I ever do this again? Because the emotional toll that it took on me, and now we lost. And he's like, this is what we do. We give it our best, and we go and we do it again. And basically, anyone who's telling you they're winning every case either is lying or they've only tried one case. That's kind of the idea, And so that was the lots more to unpack there in the sense of our relationship after that and during that time, in terms of all the stuff he gave to me. But that from them, that concept that you don't have to fear losing. Losing is if you do everything to the best of your ability. Losing comes with it, because if you go to trial, someone's going to be right and someone's going to be wrong. That's it. And so, I thought that was just kind of really something that stuck with me and always sticks with me. And I tell my associates now, and I really hammer this. We are not ashamed to lose cases. We are ashamed if we don't do the best that we can to win cases and to give the best possible advice if there are settlement opportunities. But we don't wear failure as a loss, as a failure or shame. We just get back up and do it again, And I mean, this year, so like if you look back, I mean, I had the 24.8 million verdict came in December of last year. I then went and tried a malpractice case. I lost. That was in 3 months later, early of 2024. I lost a malpractice case. I then rolled right into another case down in Alameda in Sonoma County, rolled right into another case, tried it, and ultimately settled during the trial after a few weeks of trial. Next trial that we have, we go in and get this result. So, if I had let that failure in 2015, 16, where we lost that case, paralyze me and never let me do another case, I'd be doing disservice to all these later people who I was able to help. And if I had let that impact me earlier this year when I lost that case, cared deeply for those clients, did everything I could, we lost, then I wouldn't have been able to do what I could do to help this little girl in this case. So that's, the brown green, the lack of fear of losing. I mean, that will stick with me long into my career, those words.
I had not heard that parable before, and that is very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, and please join us next week as we continue this conversation. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions for who we should have on the show. Like what you heard? Share us with a colleague and leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.